Welcome back to Turn Down for What, your source for EV news and updates. Like and subscribe for more content like this episode. Let's dive on in. Welcome back to Turn Down for What? Another day.
Another international episode.
International episode. We are here 4 weeks in a row. I'm so
Five. I think
proud
we're at
of us.
5.
5 weeks in a row. And this
Yeah.
is really 100%. And I said this last week. It's all due to the wonderful Chris Bow. Because when it comes to me and scheduling and work and life, I literally have to roll into the podcast, and we're filming now. And I'm super excited to be here. But it's been a cluster. And Chris, you've been so good about bringing on some epic hosts. The past several weeks have been great. And today is no different. And so I will lob it back to you to do our introductions as we do every week.
Yeah, I think this is a really fun one. This is something that I've, the past couple of weeks, it's just been great getting folks on. But this last one was great because we got a bunch of folks on from the Rivian community to talk about something that I had noticed where the EV sales had just taken a bit of a beating. And the only thing I had really gotten any excitement from was the possibility of R2. And I had looking at, with the cancellation of Lightning, with cancellation of my Josh and I keep going back and forth trying to let Greg back in.
I'm going to do it. I'm doing it.
You're going to do it. There we go. Sorry, Greg.
I picked up my phone to answer a text and it clicked out. So just won't touch anything.
That was great. Oh man, Josh and I were both hitting the let you back in button, and as one of us would let you in, the other would kick you back out again. That was fantastic.
No, I'm literally talking to my front of house here on text, and I put my phone down and it hit the mouse.
That was great, man. Yeah,
they were fighting over you, Greg. They were fighting over you.
Yeah, trying to get some
winning over the hearts and minds.
That is great. Yeah, so we're just talking about some of my favorite EVs just getting canceled for America, or paused depending on how the manufacturer was talking about it. So obviously the great Lightning. That congratulations, by the way, Greg, getting to drive and spend time in the Lightning. That was super cool. We can talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
That was awesome to see. So breaking our hearts there from Ford, and I'm sure we'll have lots of fun with Simon talking about that. I love Simon, by the way, because Simon makes me look calm, and that's rare to see. So yeah, and then my sister drives the BMW iX, and so that's been discontinued. One of my favorites, the ID Buzz, that one is no longer coming to America. But ironically, like both the Buzz and the iX are available in other parts of the world, as we'll talk about. Simon pointing out, like, we gave a very American-centric point of view. So I think that is one of the things that was a fair call out, and one of those things that I think we'll get into. So
us Americans, I tell you what.
I know, right? That is. So I'm going to pull up here if I can. I was going to pull it up here. Well, that's not what I want to pull up. I want to pull up the other one. So as I go to, I'm going to try to share, if this thing will let me, I'm going to try to share kind of what we talked about on that one. Let's see here.
While you get it pulled up, we posted our episode last week talking about the Rivian R2. And my wife then started looking at
R1Ss
after that. And she spent the entire last week watching every video that existed on the Rivian. And now she's completely obsessed with Rivian. And once an R1S, we watched hours of out-of-spec content with Scott getting her Rivian that she has, and like really relatable because it's like a non-EV driver going to EV, and great content that they always post. But it's been a week of watching nothing but Rivian content. So I've actually learned some stuff about the R1S just due to the massive exposure of learning about the base model of the LFP battery to the max pack and the charging performances and everything. But what a great vehicle. Anyways, keep going.
Yeah, and there's a lot there with Rivian because there's so many different variations, and we talked about that last week, where like Tom has like a special pack that, few other people have. And, there's quad motor, there's so many different options with Rivian. So yeah, we had a great conversation with the guys. It would help if I turned off the volume on that. Just talking about all the different things that were exciting about Rivian. And that's really the only thing that really got my kind of energy up about the US market. But there are so many different things available around the world that we just don't have access to. And that kind of led to, Jim Farley making some comments. And there's a whole perspective within the US that is really unique to the US. And so that is something that I think is really to our detriment because, then you go to Greg's channel, and there are some amazing videos here with his travels, and he's gone out to Europe and seen some of these Chinese cars. He's got a great video here about Chinese EV sales coming to Canada, and this is something I definitely want to get into. And that kind of leads us to our friend Simon from Trucked Up EVs. Shout out to his merch, by the way. We will leave a link.
Nice hoodie.
It's a rainy couple days here in Northern California, so I've been rocking the hoodie, staying warm and dry. Thank you, Simon, for keeping me energy efficient. I've got my heat low and my hoodie looking good, keeping me warm here in the Bay Area. So I've got this on, and he's got this recent video he's done with talking about the EV sales plummet perception, and he talked about us. He talked about our show, and this is something that got my attention because we definitely have a U.S. centric audience and a U.S. centric point of view, and we kind of came at it from that perspective about what Cox Automotive reported and what U.S. sales were like. And here he points out USA, right? And he and Greg, being Canadians, were like, hey, there's a whole world out there, fellas. There are car sales outside of the borders of the U.S. You might want to pay attention to them. And I said, fair enough. Maybe there are. So, this is the Cox report that we were kind of referring to. And there's a whole lot of data here. And so what I did is I kind of took that information and then I took and did this with it. And you can see, just as a recap, obviously Tesla leading the way in the U.S., but this is different in Canada, because in Canada, for you guys, fellas, Canada, it's down 60%? Is that right?
Yeah, it's so far in 2026, it's reporting a fall of, I believe, Greg can correct me on this, but I just saw the report. I don't remember which news organization put it out, but I believe it showed 60% down from 2025.
Yeah, it's a different story, right, across the border. So depending on where you go, there's a whole lot of different options, a whole lot of different results. I think, where I was kind of going with it, just so you guys know, and I know, hopefully we'll get some of, Greg and Simon's audience to kind of come over, and just for that backstory, what struck me was the big gap here where you've got, the magic number I look for is like 100,000 in sales a year. To me, if you get to 100,000, that's kind of the number that seems to make profitability for these automakers in the U.S. So, obviously Model Y, Model 3, here you're looking at those numbers. If you're looking at, these are quarterly figures. So all of these are hitting over 100,000. You look at BZ, Toyota BZ. I mean, kind of a pedestrian. It's fine, right?
So those sold well here in Quebec.
Oh, very well.
Those sold very well here in Quebec. Also, at the same time, Canada as a marketplace, there's only really two places that carry the EV flame, and that's going to be British Columbia and here in Quebec. And BC and Quebec always bounce back and forth to see who could outsell who and who can build more charging infrastructure. It's this weird arms race that's going on between both places. And the huge driver of EV adoption is the abundance of cheap energy, of cheap hydroelectric energy. Like I think I mentioned on the podcast a few months ago, my average rate at home, if I take my bills throughout the year through a 12-month cycle and I divide it up, it's tax in delivered about 10 cents a kilowatt hour at my house all day long, no matter when you plug in. So BC also has an abundance of cheap hydropower.
And it's about
And
the same rate too. Yeah.
yeah, so it doesn't cost like an F-150 Lightning. I've been driving my dad's F-150 Lightning for the past week, 98 kilowatt hour pack. Like at most, it will cost between $10 to $12 to do a full 100% charge on it, and you get 350, 400 kilometers of range. So it's really a no brainer.
So for the US end of things, that'd be about 200, 240 miles. And also just to put in context, both Greg and I are quoting in Canadian dollars. So it's about 35, 40% cheaper for you guys. So that $10 that we're quoting tax in would be
Like six there.
$6.50 US. You know, that's what we average through the year to charge our vehicles.
I just went and did in my latest video on my channel was kind of going over the different charging that I do, and I have a whole thing with my electrical rates, and you can see here my my off-peak plan. I kind of kick back on that video. You can see my off-peak plan there is 23 cents off-peak, right, from midnight till the afternoon there. During peak, I'm at 54 cents. And so it's a totally different situation. So I go through and I'm talking about the difference between level 1, level 2. I'm talking about how my solar works and charges my batteries, and like how I just arbitrage my energy to make it work. And just, how I go between the Model Y and the Lightning and kind of manipulate the energy rates to kind of give myself any shot at not having ridiculous energy costs out here in California, which you would think with all of our solar and wind that it wouldn't be the case. But somehow we've managed to do it. And we have tremendous EV uptake here. We're well over 20%. So obviously
that's the case also. Sorry to interrupt. That's the case also that Greg pointed out for both Quebec and BC. We were averaging over 20%. Quebec's an amazing story. Greg's
there's I'll give you an example here in Quebec, in French Canada. Bonjour et bienvenue. Over 50% of the electric vehicles in Canada, I think it's 54% of all EVs in Canada are in Quebec. And we're a population, 42 million now? And to
for
have
Canada.
For Canada, to have that concentration of vehicles, like I said, there's only really two places, BC and Quebec, that were driving the sales. I believe we're at maybe 10 to 15% total adoption of all the cars on the road are electric. I mean, it's noticeable. If you know what to look for, like I drive in the morning time to work, and I'm always on the lookout for EVs. And now they're just treated as cars here. Like they're everywhere. I actually compared Quebec in a lot of ways to Norway, is because we were one of the first adopters of electric vehicles, where they were just sort of always here and people just got on board very quickly. Like there's a couple of comments online that you always read, like, oh, I'll never give up my gas car. That's fine. But for the most part, when the rebates were good, when you had the full $12,000 rebate, so the $5,000 federal and $7,000 provincial, I mean, you could not get a test drive at Tesla. Like you go there, the Tesla stores just down the street from my shop, and at peak in like 2023, it was rammed. Like you could not get a test drive there.
So yeah, when you're talking about the rates too, I mean, that's something to put into perspective. I think that was a really important point, Chris. If you take your best rate, and I can go to the worst part of Canada, and it's half in Canada. So infrastructurally, as far as delivering electricity, that's the one. I mean, I heard about 5 posts this morning, just after I got up, before I had my first coffee and done my ablutions. There they were. The EVs are going to kill the grid. All I hear about is how great adoption is, but it's going to kill the grid. Doesn't mention anything about crypto or frickin' AI.
Never.
But the reality is we have more than enough capacity in Canada, and our Prime Minister just committed to doubling electrical capacity right across the country within the next 5 years. That's massive. That's kind of new deal kind of, like back in the 30s when you have these massive infrastructural projects. So Canada's doing that. So we already have incredibly inexpensive electricity. So your best rate, Chris, is in the province of Quebec and in the province of BC, which represents a massive portion of the land mass of Canada, you're looking at 1/3 your rate.
Yeah,
And
it's
that's our
interesting.
average compared to your best.
The U.S. average, though, I think is a lot closer to what you see in Canada. I think California is a big outlier. There's some areas that struggle similarly, but the East Coast where I live, I mean, I do charging infrastructure, so I get to study the power rates pretty intensively. And I mean,
Right.
we're averaging 10 to 20 cents on the high end in some locations, but my power in East Tennessee where I live to charge my EV, it's about 13, 14 American cents. So I mean, it's more reasonable and definitely a better use case to economically justify an EV comparative to California, which now, I mean, obviously gas prices are also triple there, so it's a one way or the other. But I mean,
You're toast either
here,
way.
yeah, I mean, here, the electric prices haven't spiked the way that gas has over the past 60, 90 days. And so every day that passes, EVs make more and more sense with, the global market changes oil prices, doubles them. The U.S. can't really control that. So now we're dealing with $4 a gallon in East Tennessee, which is really high for us. And my electric cost is still 12 cents a kilowatt. And so
Yeah, it's $2 a liter here. I could see it, kind of see it from the gas station from the SO across. It's about $2 a liter for 87 here, two Canadian dollars.
It's
But that's
it's
per
something.
liter, not gallon. Yeah.
The metric system killing me with the metric system.
Actually, if it was
Hey,
gallon,
when
here,
you
it
go
would
to
be
work,
imperial gallon.
when you go to work on that lightning of yours there, Chris, you'll notice that all the spans are in millimeters.
Yeah, the 10 millimeter bolts and all that kind of stuff. I noticed that on the 3 times I replaced my 12-volt battery on the truck, my first one.
And just to poke the bear one more time, you just put up a whole bunch of numbers in kilowatt hours. But hey,
Fair enough. I always count on my Canadian friends.
We're like half metric, half imperial, but we do our thing. It's fine.
Right. We'll figure it out. It's like that great Saturday Night Live skit. We'll measure it half this way, half that way. Why? Nobody knows. That's one of my favorite.
yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, this is I really am trying to get more educated and understand this stuff, especially here in California. This is a video that'll end up coming out when we go into ACT Expo. We're going to have that week out in Vegas, and I'm going to try to edit these together so that when we're in Vegas, we'll have some content to put up. And then I'll have like a close to an hour-long episode of all of the press conference stuff in the video that I took here at the PG&E Powerhouse, which is our local utility here in Northern California. And then I'll have a much shorter version of it that I'll put on my personal channel. This is where I got to hang out with Arch, from the CEO of Span, that does all of their panels. And I got to talk to the guys at Tesla that do the Cybertruck, and they're doing the energy arbitrage and the home vehicle to home, vehicle to grid. And I got to just see all of the experiments. I got to see like a Tesla coil and all kinds of great just testing that they're doing, and try to understand, and kind of talking to your point about the home energy in the vehicle charging is almost laughable to them. Like when people talk about, do we have enough energy for vehicle charging? It's nothing. I mean, for them, looking at like some of these power stations behind them. I mean, the type of energy, this is the original, the very first kind of mega pack that they were testing at PG&E before it was even released. Getting to see some of the stuff that they test and experiment with. This giant dome you see back here is where they do like failure testing, and they can make fog into this dome and test arcing and all kinds of like electrical, like lightning type stuff off of power poles and simulations. It's pretty remarkable. And so it was a really cool day, and you can see again these giant transformers, and we got into the whole thing about solar panels and how it helps them extend the life of their transformers. And their problem isn't with home charging. It's data centers. It's the giant DC power grid. It's how any of those things are going to really put strains on the grid. And they talked about how they're trying to bring up and ramp up things like for Tesla Semi, and how they can bring online they can look at areas where they couldn't commit to 100% of what was being asked for in terms of power for 100% of the year, but they could bring online, for 80% of the year, and then using other means of like energy backup for storage, they could fulfill the obligations for the rest of the year. They're working with all of these different industry experts, and I got to meet a bunch of them, and it was really cool. And some of this came from my criticisms of my videos, and I got to shout out PG&E for inviting me to come there and see all this stuff. And they've committed that they'll bring me out for like the GM. They have a GM Energy partnership. They're going to show me that vehicle to grid and arbitrage that they're going to be doing. So I'm committed to learning about this stuff and seeing some of this stuff firsthand. And I want to understand it better, because it turns out the vehicle charging is a drop in the bucket for them. And it's really more to do about if you're going to take their word at it. And I got like a whole 14-minute segment where I let them speak to it. And I say, hey, listen, I've been critical about the energy costs in these things, and I want to give you an opportunity to talk about it. And they talk about the cost of the forest fires and having to go through and change all of their infrastructure out, and safety, basically make it more safe to prevent those things in the future. And some of the smaller energy companies that don't have that problem don't have to pay for that. Now, at the same time, I'm still critical about the profit margins they build into it, and that's a whole topic for a different day. But this narrative of EVs and can't be supported by the grid, that's the least of our problems on the energy side.
And if I could throw something in here from a Canadian perspective, and I think this is really poignant to what you're saying here. Let's take one of the worst adoption provinces in Canada,
Alberta.
Alberta. So Alberta is an oil and gas giant, and the moment you get to Slave Lake, when I did my crazy Truck Top Canada Stop coffee tour, when I got to Alberta, everything was actually good until you started to get up into the oil country. The moment you got to Slave Lake, Alberta North, there were no DC fast chargers. The city of Fort McMurray is the only city in all of Canada, population over 50,000, that has no DC fast charger in its city. And that's your oil sands and tar sands capital, right? So, but I want to put into perspective energy. So in the province of Alberta, the one saying, we don't want windmills, they kill bats. We don't want, whatever they're going to come up with. They're blocking the view because you can't see the refinery stacks. So all of that screaming about how renewable energy will kill the grid, and meanwhile they're canceling renewable energy. 70%, not 17%. Of all electricity used in the province of Alberta goes to the industrial sector. And of that, 80% of all electricity used in the province of Alberta from that industrial sector goes to the oil sands. So electricity is used to suck fuel out of ground, to light it on fire, to, you know what I mean? Like, they're using more electricity than anything else. And the fastest growing energy consumption rate in Canada is AI and crypto. And that's where you're seeing the largest growth. And the biggest one, the laughable one, is household, is exactly what Greg just said. Household residential energy use in Alberta, so all residential combined, is 8%.
Yeah. And that's, so many people have used the justification for electric behind, the availability of power, and we can't support it in our grid. But at the same time, and I've said this before, but they're literally opening gigawatt data centers. And that means every hour of every day, that data center is consuming a gigawatt of power. And that is the equivalent of every hour charging like 28,000 Teslas every hour just for that one data center. And they're having some that's 1.2 gigawatts. There's some proposed that are 3 gigawatts. It's a massive amount of power required. And it's one of those things that, like, that one station can charge 300,000 Teslas a day, just the one.
Your superhero, your Marvel's superhero, Mr. Zuckerbuck, is going to be building a nuclear power plant for Meta.
You know what it reminds me of is we have these conversations about water here in California, and they always want us to take shorter showers or kill our lawns and all these things. But the entire residential water usage is combined is less than what it takes to grow the almonds in California.
Yep.
I
And
actually watched, sorry, I actually watched a video on that recently in California, how downstream water rights are actually a thing, where people were buying, and it's been going on for a long time, where you own the water rights that pass through your land or whatever, and you have to buy them. And it just didn't make any sense to me. But the water problem here in Quebec is weirdly enough an issue. So we're like 99% hydroelectric, and it only really works well when the reservoir levels for the dams are high. But the last
yes,
few years, they've been lower than usual, so they had to reduce energy output based on the reservoir levels. We actually just announced, so they've Hydro Quebec. There's only one power utility here; it's a Crown corporation. Um, so what they're doing is they're starting to build wind farms out east, in the Gulf of St. Lawrence or in that area, like in Charlevoix, um, to start augmenting the generation capacity. Then they just announced, I think, a $5 or $6 billion project from Hydro Quebec to build more offshore wind, because they feel it's going to be a problem going forward, uh, with reservoir levels in the dam. There just won't be enough generation capacity from the dams.
Yeah, that's a big issue with the climate change end of things here in Canada. People aren't. We have one big issue with United States over the Columbia River treaty, water treaty pact with the U.S., and that was just up for renewal and negotiation recently. And basically, it was United States telling Canada, we don't care what the drought levels are, you will provide us with a specific amount of water for our hydro dams. So it didn't matter what level so we were supposed to drain the lakes to the bed to make sure there was enough water going across to power the power in the United States downstream. So that created this huge cluster, you know what. But now we've got to a point, those dam levels are back up, but that treaty has been renegotiated because of the simple reality that hydroelectric has its own limitations, its own problems. So we're seeing some amazing projects. Greg just hit on one, a big one. Nova Scotia, the province of Nova Scotia, is about to do some amazing things again, just like he talked about with wind power. So augmenting and offsetting your risk from so many different sources, solar, wind, hydroelectric, is just smart. CBC this morning or last night did an article on how Canada is actually behind for wind and solar renewal because we become so dependent, because it's so easy for us to do hydroelectric. Site C produces more electricity, I think, one dam. Now, don't quote me on this because I'm a dumbass, but if I am right, it's very close to the California output from that one. Like that dam powers like, well, not all of California, but if you were to take the renewable sources, okay, not your storage or your traditionals, but your renewable sources, that dam can power somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million homes. One dam. It's a
so
massive amount of electricity.
so I wanna reel us in from the water conversation.
Well, it's hydro, it's electricity.
Hydro. But I do want to set Simon off because I know Simon's triggers, and so we're gonna play a fun game, because the only one that makes fun of Jim Farley better than me is Simon. So
Mean girl Jim Farley, get out of here.
mean girl. So I called jokingly Ford. I love you guys. I jokingly called Jim Farley a mean girl because for like in Disney movies, where like they'll take and they'll dare the popular jock, to date the nerd and make the nerd popular. That's kind of how I saw what he did with the EVs. Yes, I can date the EV, I can make it popular, and he did. Awesome. The EV is popular. It was just a joke. I didn't really want the EV anyway. Break up with it.
So
Break
true.
up with the EV.
It's so
right?
true.
And so that was my joke. Again, I love Jim very much, but he did. I fell in love
Now
with
he looks
Jim.
back at his ex-girlfriend and says,
Yes.
I don't want the other man to have her." You know what I mean?
Right.
And yeah.
Like Jim took me to prom. He flew me out to Detroit. We had a great time together. And he put the little thing on my leg. You know what I'm saying? I felt really good about it. And So in the recent news, this is one of my favorites. And I know this is going to be great for Simon, so we're going to get a great conversation out of this. Ford CEO says Chinese car makers entering the U.S. would be devastating. My take on it, and I'm interested to hear yours, is that I do think it would be a challenge if they just started importing a bunch of, affordable, cheap Chinese cars into the U.S. and all of our manufacturing jobs were gone. This is the heart of the conversation I want to hear today, because, on Greg's channel, there's a whole, that's Simon again. On Greg's channel, there's a whole thing here about Chinese car sales, right?
Yeah.
But then on the same breath, right? And so this was, this one was April 13th. April 13th, Chinese car makers devastating. April 16th, Ford will partner with more Chinese automakers. And of course, we know they're using Chinese battery tech on their future EVs. Now, I understand these are different things, right? Because they're partnering with China overseas, not in the U.S., except for where they're partnering with Chinese battery makers in the U.S. And again, to be clear, I love the LFP from CATL. They make brilliant batteries. I want the partnerships. I think Chinese automakers building in the U.S., making U.S. jobs, a la the Korean automakers and the Japanese automakers and the Germans would all be great. That's kind of where I'm at on it. I'd love to hear your perspectives, guys, because you have Chinese cars that are coming into Canada. Greg, you've seen these things. Let's start with China and the question for Simon, because I know this whole Jim Farley thing is something that's close to your heart. Let's start with you, and then let's hear from Greg on this.
Okay. Oh, which one do you want us to start with here?
No, yeah. Who's starting?
I was going to say Simon first, because I know this is something that
All right. Will it get Simon to go off, and then I'll calm down the conversation.
Yeah. Let's truck it up. Let's truck it up.
Jack it up and then bring down the tempo.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
right.
Sounds good. Okay, so I love the F-150 Lightning. I've done so many videos on the F-150 Lightning. My channel is Trucked Up EVs. I celebrate all EV trucks. Some at the Tesla crowd might disagree with me, but overall, all EV trucks, as far as I'm concerned, are wonderful to have on the road. As far as what's coming out of Jimbo's mouth, I got one word for you. It's actually an acronym, which I typically hate. FUD. 100% pure FUD. He is on a talking point bonanza. He's been going across the whole country. Started about a year ago. I did a video on that over a year ago when his narrative changed. And it changed with the election, and it instantly flipped to a new narrative. And he's not an altruistic guy. He's out to make profit for his company. I get it. That's what a company does. But misleading, spreading fear, uncertainty, and doubt about your own frickin' product is appalling. And the fact that he went out 6 months after saying the F-150 Lightning is one of the best trucks we've ever made, best vehicles we've ever made, and to come out and say, and no one's going to buy these expensive things with $30,000 batteries in them. It's unsustainable. It's complete. It's a waste. It's so foolish, and we're losing so much money, and we're going to have to write off billions and billions and billions. And all those write-offs somehow ended up paying for the Tennessee truck factory to make, Super Duties and F-150s. So it's really good to do all kinds of accounting, like what I call gymnastics, where you separate all of your divisions so you can show pure loss to your EV division. When a company comes out and changes directions, they put in billions and billions and billions of dollars on new factories, and that's all losses. But it's amalgamated into the company as you make those changes. Instead, they separated it so they could say it's a losing proposition. And meanwhile, while they're saying how bloody expensive the Lightning was, when I went on the lot in 2024 and bought a Lightning Flash, a loaded vehicle just below the Lariat, that thing was $7,000 cheaper than a V8. And now that we've seen the expensive Lightning disappear, we've got $100,000 diesels on the lot. trucks are becoming more and more unaffordable, but where's the profit? And if you start looking at those kind of things, you're going to see what Jimbo's up to, and that is chase the short-term profit. Who cares about the future? We'll deal with that later. We'll ride the wave. And the one thing to be able to do that is protectionism, is keep everybody else out. China, it's funny. Commenter commented yesterday, and it was, I'm going to paraphrase, but he basically said, why is it that Ford is screaming about the invasion of China? And meanwhile, they're partnering with China. Meanwhile, they're getting half their parts from China. And meanwhile, their most profitable divisions that are coming out are with their EV products in Europe and in China. So they're speaking to Americans. They're talking to the U.S. market alone to convince them of why they're not going to do it. Why is it that they can profit with an EV in Europe or in China or in any part of Asia or in South America or in Australia, but they can't profit with that same vehicle in America? Something smells really bad, and they canceled one of the best all-around functional pickup trucks for electrification on the road because they knew they could. I don't see anything other than a shift for short-term profit, and I don't think it's really, it's so shallow short-sightedness. And the only way to protect yourself is to stop the Chinese from coming in. I disagree that the Chinese would devastate the economy because Ford isn't making any bloody EVs. They're now making one. What exactly is the BYD and the Zeekr and all these vehicles going to threaten? They don't make anything. They're threatening what they want to make in the future when it's profitable for them to do so. So Europe is competing, right? Volkswagen just became number one seller of EVs for the quarter.
I believe five of the top 10 best-selling EVs in Europe are within the Volkswagen Automotive Group umbrella. Skoda and Enyaq, Elrock, ID3 is still up there,
right?
And I believe the one of either the Cupra Born or the ID4. But I know for sure there's the two Skodas on there, the Elrock and the I just mentioned it. There's so many. I'm trying to think. There's just, but Volkswagen in general in Europe, they're always screaming bloody murder, but no one wants their EVs. But
they're selling.
They're selling. You see them out there. There's always an Elrock. There's always an Enyaq charging. There's always an ID3. There's always an ID3.
Always.
I see them everywhere.
See, I think we don't realize that because we don't see the Skodas. We don't see we don't see those in America.
You don't see 95% of the EVs in the world. That's what you don't see.
Right.
And I think that's the point. Is Americans, I think, are being shafted from having choice. So we hear Farley in the White House saying, "We're going to bring you more choice," and in the same sentence, he starts canceling crap. So I think it's just total talking point FUD feeding. In Europe, they're making profit on EVs. And in Europe, to be fair, one of my commenters also roasted my butt saying, "Oh, you like to cherry pick information because they're facing tariffs. Europe is tariffing Chinese product, and you're saying, oh, well, the only reason they can't make it in the United States is because of tariffs." Well, to also make the statement and generalize that Europe is a country is, well, you need to go back and take grade 8 geography, because it's dozens of countries. People still refer to Britain as Europe. Well, Britain's not in the EU. So each one of these countries has their own policies, yes. And there are tariffs, but they're tiered. They're like Canada. Everyone says, oh, Chinese EVs are coming to Canada. No, they're not. We have a specific tariff-free amount, and then a tariff kicks
49,000
exactly,
and then up to 70,000 by 2030. And
correct.
The 50% under $35,000 Canadian only applies it has to be by 2030 in Canada.
And that was the other thing that Canada did that was very smart. Who do you think is going to take advantage of the Chinese rule change that United States administration right now is having a cardiac over and screaming at us for doing, when it's only 49,000 vehicles, 3% of our entire annual vehicle sales. And by the way, the 70% of all new vehicle sales in Canada are no longer the Detroit 3 because Canadians have fired them. They're Toyota and Honda, who have never closed a factory or laid off
Yeah.
people or threatened our country.
I'll just give you, I'll just give you an example on how small the amount of Chinese cars that are coming to Canada. So we did get Chinese cars before, up until the stupid tariff came in. Most rear-wheel drive Model 3s and Model Ys are Shanghai built. They came in here, they flooded them. At one point here in Quebec, you could have bought a Model 3 Shanghai built LFP car for like $38,000 Canadian after rebates. I'll just give you the number. So Hyundai Genesis sold about 150,000 cars last year in Canada, and people are up in arms about the 50 to 70,000 Chinese cars coming in. All the Chinese cars are replacing is basically the pre-tariff levels of cars coming in. And in terms of Chinese brands, Tesla is going to benefit from it immediately because they're already established here. They can sell cars. They're approved for sale in Canada. Volvo can do it. I'm hearing Lotus wants to bring in. I think they're going to sell like 2 of those here, whatever of their EVs. But in terms of
Because
Chinese
they already have
brand,
the dealers. They already have the dealers or showrooms.
Yeah, they have some sort of a dealer network at Lotus. Not much. The Lotus dealer is not far. But what it is that what nobody's looking at is Geely is all Volvo, Polestar, Lotus. So they already have a foothold. It's not a big foothold, but they already have a foothold in Canada. And
see, I want to see Zeekr. I want to see BYD. I want to see those.
BYD. All the cars have to be approved for sale in Canada, and the approval process it's navigating the approval process. It's getting a dealer network opened up. It's getting just things in place. It just takes time. Like, you can't just turn on a light switch and you're ready to sell cars. Tesla can, because they're all ready to sell.
And that's one of the points that I wanted to bring up. Greg just nailed it. I want you to put this into context. Why do you think the Canadian government put that $35,000 cap rule in place? Well, I'll answer it for you because I'm a dumbass and I like to answer my own questions. The reason is to stop Ford and to stop Tesla and to stop the legacy using China as a backdoor to deliver their Chinese vehicles to Canada that they're not willing to build here, or they're not willing to build in the United States. So who has the best door to open to bring in Chinese product right away? Tesla, Ford, Stellantis.
It's like Tesla's already there. Like, we don't need to see more Teslas
but they
over
can
there.
make
I want to
more
see
money.
some of the other ones.
They can make more money taking advantage of this. So by putting the $35,000 rule in place, you just nailed it there, Chris, was saying, I want to see the Zeekrs and the Geelys and the BYDs, because those are available below $35,000. The whole idea that Canada did to do this is bring the price of EVs down, to create open competition, to force the traditional car companies to step up. And look what's happening. Toyota globally is stepping up. They were the laggards. I roasted the snot out of them on so many of my episodes. And
Josh and I have done the same thing.
They've leapfrogged ahead, and they're going to do it again with EV trucks. Remember, I'm just an EV truck channel. That's what I focus on. They're going to leapfrog everybody, especially Ford, GM, and Stellantis, when they just suddenly show up on our shores with a solid state Tacoma or something nuts. And already there's been a step change in quality and stats and specs coming out of the BZ line. They just put out 12 new EVs. So they were out of the picture for the longest time. And now in Canada, man, they're selling. Go ahead. Sorry, Greg.
So they have the 2 big sellers coming up are going to be, and that's the thing why the new federal government rebate is capped under $50,000 on an EV in Canada. Is the first time they did the rebates, there was no selection at all. So they had, I think, at $60,000 or $65,000 because that's what they cost. But now this time around, there's a lot more affordable choices. So you have the new Nissan Leaf, you have the Kia EV4. That Ultra models apply for either the 54 kilowatt hour battery or the 80 kilowatt hour battery. It applies. Also, the two EVs I'm getting asked about a lot, and they're not even in the press fleet yet, are the Toyota CHR and the Subaru the Uncharted, which is the
Yeah.
same vehicle, and those will probably be about $35,000 after the rebate. But even without it, $40,000 is not bad. And I think this is a big problem, that there's a lot of nonsense out there, especially from dubious websites saying like CanadaChinaEV.com, and then you start looking up the information. They're based in Albania. They just want people to sign up to leave a deposit and basically harvest your info. But I don't think the Chinese EVs are going to be that cheap as what people are claiming. Like, someone put out a list saying BYD Dolphin $16,000. Like, that's not going to happen in Canada,
Yeah,
because
there's no way.
right now, even in Australia, if you look at a BYD Dolphin Surf or the BYD Surf, it has so many names. The small 5-door hatchback, which I saw in Germany and looked amazing. I could see that in Canada, 42 kilowatt hour version being mid 20,000s, 26,000. If they could actually pull that off, it would be amazing. The whole problem with EVs in general is the interest is there. People just don't want to pay $80,000 for them, and they just want to see cheaper options. And this is where the Koreans are really starting to nail it. They have the more affordable options covered. The Ioniq 3 was just announced. I'm pretty sure we'll see that here. Kia's released the EV5 here. They're going to release the EV3. The EV4 is already on sale. And if you want the luxury stuff, like the Genesis I have, it's not cheap, but it's absolutely beautiful. It's beautifully built. It drives beautifully. So there's always talk about the Chinese side, but no one ever really talks about what the Korean companies are doing at the same time. And their tech is fantastic. I mean, it's right up there. And also with China, their development cycle on a car can be anywhere between 12 to 18 months.
Which is crazy.
That's total development. Versus like a company like, let's say, BMW might be years, like 4, 5, 6 years of development time from the time they come up with the idea to actually start making a pre-series production car. So there's a lot of fear. Sorry.
Well, I wanted to go ahead and finish your thoughts, and then I want to transition to a closing topic.
There's just a lot of fear that China right now could outdevelop the legacy manufacturers.
I think they
people
can.
ranting. Yeah, well, they can, but people are ranting on Stellantis. Like, Stellantis has access to a Leap motor. They could leapfrog everyone. Like, they have an interesting EV product portfolio in Europe at Stellantis, and even Ford. Ford, the Explorer EV, the Capri EV, those are actually Volkswagen MEB based.
Yeah.
They just launched a partnership with Renault. Renault they cannot keep Renault 5s and Renault 4s in stock. They
So
just
they're gone.
launched
Yep.
they just launched the Twingo. The Twingo, I think, starts at like 20,000 euros, 23,000 euros. Like, yeah, it's a small city car, but I mean, that's what the Twingo always sort of was. So the European manufacturers are there, and sometimes, like, Ford really bothered me because I really believed that that they make great EVs. I've been driving an F-150 Lightning all week, and it's one of the best EVs I've driven. I'm like, it's so hilarious to drive it because it's just so much fun. Like, you don't it almost drives like a Bentley in terms of quietness and smoothness. And they step on the accelerator, and it goes like a sports car. It's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, I can't wait to see your video. I think I would like to see you have videos on the Lightning, but
we have a few coming up. Road
Okay.
trip, I did a charging test, and today I'm actually going to go film the actual like review and thoughts.
Awesome.
And we had it out the other day. I was out filming for Out of Spec, the amazing Quebec EV charging sites, where now it's pretty much there's EV charging at every exit off the highway. Like, you don't even need to do route planning here. It's just there.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Simon will agree with that as well in Quebec.
Oh, yeah. When I did my trip across the country, yeah, Quebec's an absolute darling. I think both provinces and states can learn from Quebec. They're one of the shining examples of EV adoption for their population. I was so impressed by everything I saw in Quebec.
Yeah, and you've got a great, your trucked up tour across Canada was just fantastic, Simon.
Thank you.
It's amazing. I'd love to talk more about that and get into that one time. I hope you do another one. I think that, and kind of go back and recap, because they've improved a lot too on that.
Yeah, it's coming, but we're going to do something very special with it too. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, when's you have a video I know you talked about that you recently have been working on. When's that one going to drop with some of the things you've been doing on the Lightning? When's that one going to post?
Well, the first messing about with it will hopefully post tomorrow. I'm in post production, but I've got over 60 footage films. So I've got 50 pieces of footage I have to stitch together to make it work. So it's going to be quite the job. So I'm hoping I get it done before like midnight tonight and get it up.
Okay.
So hopefully you'll see it tomorrow, or the latest, I'm thinking maybe Wednesday. So we should be good.
So we've got that coming from Simon. That's Trucked Up EVs. We're going to leave a link to that in the description. Simply Gregster with his Lightning content, and of course both of them with recent China commentary and coverage.
Sorry, I still have to post videos I filmed in Europe. That's how
you have more stuff coming. Okay,
that's how far I'm behind. We did that week in Europe, in Germany and the Netherlands. I still have that to post. But I posted the actual Mercedes CLA review is up on the Out of Spec Bits channel.
Yes,
so, at least one of the videos got posted.
That's an awesome one. And so I think that brings me to what I think the closing topic here. We've just got a couple minutes here, but I'd love to get your feedback on this, because things like the CLA or the i3X are great for the American market, because they give you that 400 plus miles of range, or the Lucid, where you've got that deep range, the Silverados of the world that need that deep range. And these things often, though, come with heavy prices. These are middle upper class income, high class income, the Lucid Gravity. These are road tripping cars. The American landscape, with my road trip that I did, going from Tennessee, where Josh was, out here to California, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe, Simon, your trip across Canada, or even Josh West 24/7 with his trip with the Model S years ago, I think those are more rare. That's the case. And I believe we talked early on at the very beginning of the show that you guys have pockets of EV adoption in Canada. And again, correct me here in a second, but I imagine those to be very European almost, in the fact that pocket is, there's EVs here and there's EVs here, and those are almost European in the way that those EVs are used, and that adoption and the cars and the vehicles that can be bought there can fit that European lifestyle, and even the purchases can fit that in the way that a Norway or the UK can fit the purchase styles. And correct me if I'm wrong on this.
I'm going to disagree a little bit there, because
tell me.
We always hear about how Americans need more range. Oh man! So let me get into that just very, very briefly.
And let me just pause, and then I'll let you continue. And the reason, and I just look at things like, I'm not seeing, the Bolt is not moving. The Leaf isn't moving. The Kona isn't moving. Those are all affordable vehicles. And you would think you would be able to argue that why aren't those affordable kind of commuter car vehicles? And this is where I worry about Ford's affordable EV, right? Affordable, but going to be a little bit lower range. It's going to be in that Bolt of, I don't know. Anyway, continue, Simon. That's what worries me.
I think,
well,
right? that's part of it. I mentioned
Why are
earlier,
none of those selling?
I mentioned earlier one word, FUD. If you successfully scare the living crap out of your population, and you have the most hostile environment towards EVs currently on the planet, you're going to turn your population off from buying EVs. And when you have states saying, we're going to road tax you because you're using up our roads because your vehicles are heavier, blah, blah, whatever it is, all of that has had a compounding effect. But getting back to your point about how we can be more European in what we choose. Yes, we do have urban areas where there's really heavy density use of EVs. But as Greg pointed out, I mean, Quebec is like twice the size of Texas. Like it's, so for this referring to us being more European, we're the second largest landmass on the planet. And we have a population that's not much bigger than California.
Are they driving them out there though? Are they taking those big road trips out there to those?
Yeah,
well, you don't have
expansive. Most of the Canadian population, though, to be honest, the bulk of the Canadian population lives basically between like Windsor, Ontario, Detroit, out to Quebec City in a 800 kilometers by 200 kilometer stretch. And like, you go to Ontario, going down the 401, I could be on the 401 in like 25 minutes. It's still difficult charging. One of the world's busiest highways, it's still difficult charging. Like if you didn't have access to the Tesla network, you would have a really, really rough time.
It's like
Versus myself,
going through the Dakotas or Wyoming up in
pretty
our
much.
area. Yeah.
Not maybe not that bad, but like right now here in Quebec, like you'll see on the video, it's got to the point where they're even installing pull through charging for trucks with trailers at rest areas. They're getting ready for the electrification of big rigs. Like they're investing like crazy. Like that's why I always tell people, if you live here or even in BC, it's wild. I have to make a trip out there. But like right now here, it's so good. There's no reason not to have an electric car, and even
Same for BC.
pockets,
Yeah, absolutely.
and even like
Okay.
pockets in Ottawa. Ottawa is still bad, the capital of Canada, in terms of like charging and adoption, but it's getting better. I go up there often enough. It's every time you go up there, there's a new site that's open. You see more and more EVs on the road in Ontario. They're green license plates as well. So it's there. I just think the big problem with it is not so much the road tripping. Is how many road trips do you take a year? Like maybe 5 or 6. It's just the cost problem. Like right now here, you see a ton of new Leafs everywhere you go. There's a ton of new Nissan Leafs, and the Bolts aren't selling well because I don't really necessarily think it's good value for money. I think the Leaf is a better product. And you're starting to see the EV4s. When the EV3 launches here, they're not going to keep them in stock. They're not going to be able to keep them in stock.
But yeah, to wrap up, like like Ontario's a disaster. I just want to mention that Ottawa and some of the places you mentioned, the 401, it is disaster. And it was just really, again, kind of an anti EV sentiment for a while as far as policy is concerned. The province's own network, Ivy, is a joke. But if I go rural, I can drive to the Northwest Territories in BC. Every major paved highway, I'll never go more than 100 miles or 150, 160 kilometers without having access to DC fast chargers everywhere. That's the same now for Alberta until you get to oil country. Then the next
Yeah.
province over, Saskatchewan. You have a network now of being able to get everywhere. And our prime minister is just saying we're investing massively into making sure there's an electric highway everywhere in the country. So that population density thing, yeah, most Canadians live about 200 kilometers from the US border. That's where the highest population density is. It gets much more dense when you get to Eastern Canada, not the same in the prairies. Like the largest populations are centralized, like Calgary and Edmonton are central to Alberta. So it does change as you go across, and that has an effect on adoption. But we are moving fast towards full integrated infrastructure right across the whole country. Doesn't matter where you live. This is the commitment that the government's making. And that's the hang up in the United States is there's this belief that you've got to have range. There's no infrastructure out there. But at the same time, they just canceled all the infrastructure programs and stopped funding all these different things. Well, of course, you get what you pay for. Governments put money into roads. If you want EV adoption, you have to put that infrastructure the same as you would with roads.
I mean, I think private enterprises largely picked up a lot of that. You've got IONNA out there really expanding heavily.
Yeah.
Their partnership with Circle K is looking good.
Yeah,
I'm
that's a
interested.
nice- Yep.
Yeah, I'd love
Walmart.
Walmart.
We're starting to see all those companies here in Canada. Tim Hortons.
Tim Horton.
They're all going to have these, and that's what's going to happen because they're starting to see the actual profit value in keeping somebody at your Tim Hortons coffee shop for 25 minutes. That's a lot of donuts.
I tend to charge, like whenever we're on road trips here. I know where all the good spots are. I prefer to pay sometimes slightly more of a premium. Even in Europe, it's the same. I'll pay. I mean, DC charging in Europe is crazy expensive if you don't have a subscription plan. But I'll pay slight premium to have a nicer experience versus charging next to a dumpster in the middle of July with rotting garbage in it.
And I have to do my obligatory shout out for my Canadian. IONNA is supposed to be standing for North America,
Yeah,
not just.
I don't know what's going on at IONNA, and I'm going to call them out a bit here. Is like, they said that it was supposed to be North American. They don't have one site in
Not
Canada
one.
open up yet. So are they like actually serious? And the money's there. Is money from provincial governments and from the federal government. Ottawa will pay you to install the charging site. They'll pay 50-60% of it. So I'm not too sure what their plan is, but from a Canadian perspective, I don't want to trash talk them, but it's getting pretty annoying. Um,
That all
especially,
the marketing talks about
yeah,
what they're doing, and none of it's
but
actually
all
happening.
exactly, none of it's Mercedes happened. I was at the launch last year for the Mercedes charging network. They're getting the ball rolling. They opened in BC, and yeah, I don't, unless IONNA is looking at buying a charging provider in Canada or partnering up with someone. I don't really know what's going on. I've emailed them a few times and really got no reply. So it's so
Are there Are there any different rules that would keep? So I know right now they're really heavily into using the Alpatronics, hardware. So is there anything that would make it more complicated? And they've got that partnership with
No,
Circle
actually,
K.
I would say it'd probably be easier.
Easier.
Yeah,
ask.
there's such a welcoming, both provincially and federally right now. There's funds, there's infrastructure, there's partnerships.
Circle
I
K
don't
is owned
understand.
by a Canadian company, right?
Yeah, they're
Exactly.
owned by Couche-Tard. They're
Yeah.
half an hour away from here, up in Laval. You might want to ask Brandon Flash about
Yeah.
the Alpi. I do know the Canadian power grid has a few nuances compared to the American stuff, and my understanding is not all the equipment is compatible. The ABB stuff is pretty compatible. That's why you see a lot of it here, especially in Quebec. But now we're slowly starting to get 400 kilowatt charging in Quebec with ABB A400 equipment. So you might want to reach out to Brandon and see what he has to say on that. But they might be a compatibility issue with voltage ranges or something going on there.
Yeah, we gotta make sure we continue to pressure our friends over there. I don't have any big contacts. They've only just started opening here in the Bay Area, and so my friend Zach over at the Bay Area Rivian Club has more of the connection there. But yeah, I know that's one of those sticking points where
The
it's like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. The only difficult thing is in Quebec and BC, well, especially in Quebec, the biggest charging network is actually owned by the provincial government and which is owned by the provincial power utility. And they tend to favor their own network. Like they could have a site up in a week. And they've done it with site upgrades. It was running in a week versus a third party, or if we got together and wanted to build a charging site here, getting the utility to come and do the grid connection, I'm not joking, could be anywhere between 6 months to 18 months. The largest supercharger in Canada in Ajax, Ontario, 44 posts, was supposed to open in January, and they don't have a grid connection yet. But all the equipment is installed, so they're just missing a transformer.
Josh, it sounds like there is a call for Power Up Canada.
Hey, I'm wide open. I mean, we're taking one step at a time, but we can definitely look at it. We talked to the guys over at the Nerd News, and they're up in Canada as well, and they've asked us about 12 times to come electrify Canada.
That's awesome, man. Oh man. Well, fellas, hey, look, we're hitting the hour mark here, and I know, Greg, you've got a job to do. Josh is hitting the road. I've got to hit the job site myself. And I appreciate the conversation. Like all of these kind of talks when we could go on for another whole hour, and it would be a great time. This stuff is so much fun for me. I think my takeaway, and I'll let you guys give your closing remarks and where they can find you guys in your channels here as we go around the horn. But I think my takeaway from hearing you guys is, look, VW's doing just fine out there, and they've got all these different brands that we don't even talk about, not just from VW, but Ford themselves, Stellantis, has brands out there doing great, and there's no reason to keep these guys out. And China has some great products out there that we've driven and we've seen, but no, they're not going to take over the world. There's nothing to fear out there. We're kind of doing it to ourselves is what it sounds like you guys are saying. But I don't want to put words in your mouth. So let's let's go around and we'll go to Simon, and then we'll close out with Greg, and tell them where they can find you and give us your closing thoughts, Simon.
Well, as I said before, I'm just a dumb bugger with a truck, but I celebrate the fact that we need to have adoption. And one of the last kind of nuts to crack, being here in North America, is the North American pickup truck. If we want to see full EV adoption, the North American pickup truck is the one that we have to address. So it's been a very painful year for my channel. To see the direction that the United States has taken with that, with the Detroit 3. But I'm actually very hopeful. I'm very, very hopeful because I'm seeing so many things coming out of Korea. I'm seeing moves by Japan now. We're definitely seeing a lot of excitement in Europe and especially in China. And the rest of the world is moving at breakneck speed. And so it's a positive thing. And rather than us falling into this negative trap, we can know that adoption is racing along. And competition is doing very well. And the more a market opens up and accepts the fact that, hey, we got to compete at some point, as Jim Farley was saying, on one news article one day, he's roasting China, saying we can't let them in, which he had to backtrack his comments on, by the way. He had to make a public apology on some of the stuff that he said we need to partner with China. The reality is they're trying to find their footing in how they won't lose their profits. But at the end of the day, we need that. We all need that. Consumers need that. We need choice. And I say sooner or later, the walls are coming down. And you're either going to be prepared for it or you're going to get driven over. So here's to all the new EV trucks coming to market. I'm just hoping Canadians can buy them. I wish you all the best in the United States. But, we're going to have the PV5 here. You're not. So there.
I want to see that.
Yeah, we
PV5
need to see.
Looks cool.
Yeah, we need more and more choice for United States consumers.
Where can folks find you, Simon?
They can find me at Trucked Up EVs on YouTube. That's where I hang out. And going to be coming out with some pretty crazy episodes. We're doing an ultimate EV truck build. We are going to make a crazy change to an F-150 Lightning, and that's just kicking off.
Awesome. Greg, let's talk about you, man. What are your final thoughts, and talk about your channel?
I was getting concerned with where the Canadian market was headed. In fact, I was even getting concerned about my channel. You could find me on Simply Gregster EV on YouTube and all the various other platforms. I was getting concerned with the direction of the channel because all these EVs are being canceled. Everything was rolling back. But the news that Chinese EVs will make it into Canada fired me back up. It's been great for the channel. Also, having to go to the car shows, to media days, really exposed me to the new models that are coming out, speaking to the reps with their product planning, especially on the Korean side. Like if you would have told me 2 years ago that the EV3 would be in Canada, I would have said that's never going to happen. But there's excitement. There's excitement around those models. I still think affordability is a huge problem. That's the question I get asked the most. People want to buy an EV, but they don't want to pay $80,000 or $90,000 for a small commuter car. I don't think the range is too big of a deal. Most people seem happy with 30-minute charging, although me, Colton, Kyle, and Brandon, all of us, the faster the charging, the better. But unfortunately, you're only going to get that out of China because they can scale it at cost, as we saw with the BYD flash chargers. I'm happy where the market is headed. It could always be better, but we're going to get there slowly. We just have to figure out the direction that we're headed in. Like, do we want to go full in on cheap Chinese EVs, or do we want to continue to spur on manufacturers, existing manufacturers? I think we should, but also competition is healthy.
And where can the folks find you, man?
Well, they could find me on my YouTube channel. I'm usually there. I'm behind on content at the moment, but that will change this week, hopefully. X, TikTok, Instagram. I'm always around. If I'm not in Canada, I'm somewhere jetting off in Europe. So you could find me on both sides of the Atlantic.
Yeah, you've got great stuff on your channel. I love when you go over to Europe and get to play with those different vehicles that we don't certainly get to see here in the U.S. I was really blessed to see some stuff where
the electric trucks in Amsterdam,
Yes.
just to touch on this quickly, the amount of electric trucks in Amsterdam and
Yeah.
the Netherlands and Europe in general, like electric dump trucks, cranes, construction equipment. Felix took me for a tour of Amsterdam for like 4 hours walking around, and there was more EVs in Amsterdam or electric equipment than I have ever seen anywhere else in one place.
Yeah, I had that same experience going around. I got to spend time in Amsterdam, seeing exactly what you saw there, and I've got family that's out there in the Netherlands, and then getting to go to Norway and getting to meet William from
Yeah,
roaming out of spec roaming now. He was
out of spec roaming.
yeah, and just getting
So
to drive there and experience the Zeekr. I think I went to the same Zeekr showroom you probably
yeah,
did in
probably.
Amsterdam.
Well, if you do come up here, I think even if you go to Quebec City, maybe we could try to arrange something. It's there's a lot of interesting stuff around there.
I'm going to be there for about 24 hours, and we've got some stuff planned. I'm going to shoot you my itinerary. If
Yeah,
there's maybe we can do something briefly, man. I'm gonna see what we can work out. I'm going to shoot you that over.
sounds
But
good.
yeah, and we've got a weird we got a cruise ship going out of Quebec and then heading down along the east side of Canada. Back into the U.S. and it leaves at like 11 o'clock at night of all the weird things. So it's a bizarre. I don't know what's going on over there. They don't want to see the Americans in the daytime, so they're hiding us at night. But yeah, I'll shoot you over my itinerary. We're going to be there for about 24 hours ahead of time, and we're going to tour a couple things there in Quebec. But maybe we can somehow figure out how to connect, because that would be really cool just to get to meet you and to see some stuff out there.
It would be my pleasure.
Yeah, super cool, man. My stuff you can find at Bow Family EV, so go check out that stuff. I just did some stuff with my charging, checking out the difference between J1772 and NACS, and different charging between 40 amp and 48 on the different things that I've got going on. I've got some stuff with Turned Down for Watt coming out when we go to travel to ACT Expo. So if you guys are in Vegas for ACT Expo, come find Josh, Jesse, and myself, and that should be exciting. We've got, I know Power Up America is coming out with exciting news soon. So Josh will have that coming. That's going to be fun. And we'll have another episode next week where we've got BJ from formerly... what was that thing called? Electrify Expo, and they've changed the name on that. So we're gonna get into some controversy on how that is
That would be an interesting
transitioned.
one.
Yeah, we're gonna, and I always appreciate, when these places are willing to come on and talk about it, because that's another one where they, kind of broke my heart, right? An all electric car show, right? And now they've kind of integrated like so many others, and they're bringing in some of the hybrids and the gas vehicles, and hey, BJ, come and explain yourself, man. And he agreed to do it. So kudos to him, right? He's going to speak to how Electrify Expo is now more of a incorporated show of everything that, we'll see. We'll see how that conversation goes. I'm curious to hear the rationale behind it. And so that'll be a fun conversation next week. So make sure everybody tunes in for that. And then again, we'll be at Electrify Expo the first or second week of May, however that calendar works out there. I can't remember where that falls, but and then then when we're out there, I'll release the PG&E stuff that I talked about earlier in the show. So thanks everybody for watching. Thank you guys for joining us, and it's always fun to have these conversations. I'll leave links for their channels down in the descriptions, and I'll make sure Simon's shop, if you guys want to get yourself a comfortable hoodie, man, you cannot go wrong, man. This thing, he's got other merch too, but I'm a hoodie guy, so this is, if you want to be warm for the summer, this is the hoodie to have. Thank you guys for joining us. Josh,
Thank you so
any
much.
final
Take care.
words? I saw you took yourself off mute there. Did you have okay.
I was just gonna say it's been another great episode. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Greg, for hopping
Oh,
on.
thank you,
And,
Josh, for
love
having us
having you
on.
guys back on the
Thank
podcast.
you for having us.
We'll reconnect again very soon. So thank you all.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
Thanks for tuning in to Turn Down for What. Make sure you're subscribed with your notifications on to tune in to more EV news and updates. See you next time.